All right, today we are going to tackle one of the most notorious names in history, Machiavelli. His book, The Prince, has been called everything from a work of political genius to a handbook for pure evil. But is that really all there is to it? Let's dig in and find out.
So, let's just start with the big one. When you hear the word Machiavellian, what pops into your head? I'm willing to bet it's not something good, right? It's definitely not a compliment. It conjures up a very specific and kinda dark image.
Yeah, exactly. Cunning, scheming, ruthless. We think of someone who is manipulative, power-hungry, someone who will stop at nothing to get what they want. You know, the kind of person who believes the ends always justify the means, no matter how brutal those means are.
But is that it? Is that the whole picture? Or is there something more complex, something more understandable behind that infamous reputation? That's what we're here to figure out.
Okay, so to really get The Prince, you can't just read the book by itself. That's a huge mistake. You've got to understand the world it was born into. And let me tell you, Machiavelli's world, it was on fire. It was pure chaos. So picture this, late 15th, early 16th century Italy. It wasn't one country like it is today. No, it was this chaotic patchwork of city-states, Florence, Milan, Venice, all constantly at war with each other. And if that wasn't bad enough, you had these massive foreign powers, like France and Spain, just rolling in whenever they felt like it. And right in the middle of all this is our guy, Niccolo Machiavelli. He was a diplomat, so he had a front-row seat to all the backstabbing and collapsing governments. He saw it all. And this is maybe the most important thing to get about the book. It wasn't some lofty philosophical essay written from an ivory tower. No way. It was a down-and-dirty, pragmatic guidebook for a leader who was just trying to keep their state from being wiped off the map. It was, plain and simple, a survival guide. So what's actually in this playbook of his? Well, he broke it down into a few core ideas that, honestly, people are still arguing about 500 years later. All right, first up is this concept called virtù. And right away, you have to get our modern idea of virtue, being morally good, out of your head. That is not what he meant. For Machiavelli, virtù was all about effectiveness. It's the skill, the courage, the decisiveness. It's that raw talent and force of will a leader uses to actually shape events and get things done. But of course, a leader can't control everything. There's always this other massive force at play, and he called it fortuna. Basically, it's fortune, luck, all the random stuff that happens that's completely outside your control. A key ally suddenly dies, a rival makes an unpredictable move, a harvest fails, that's fortuna, and it can destroy everything. So you've got this epic struggle, right? Virtue versus fortuna. Politics for him was basically this constant wrestling match between what a leader can control, their skill, and what they can't, pure random luck. A great ruler in his eyes doesn't just sit back and hope for good luck. They use their virtue to build defenses against bad fortune, and they're ready to pounce on any opportunity that good fortune sends their way.
Okay, so how exactly do you do that? How do you fight fortuna? Well, Machiavelli gives us this incredible and very famous animal analogy. He says a leader has to be two animals at once, a fox and a lion. Why? Because each one is strong where the other is weak.
And he puts it perfectly himself. He writes, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox and a lion." You see? You need the fox's cleverness to see the political traps and schemes, but you need the lion's raw power to scare away your enemies, the wolves. It's all about being adaptable. And all of this, the cunning, the strength, the realism, it all leads to maybe the most famous and definitely the most controversial question in the entire book.
So I'll ask you, is it better for a leader to be feared or to be loved? Of course, in a perfect world, a leader would be both. But Machiavelli wasn't interested in perfect worlds. He forces the issue. If you absolutely have to choose one, which is it?
And here comes the answer. The cold, brutal answer that has echoed through the centuries. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. And notice that word he uses, safer. This isn't about being a bully for the sake of it. It's about what is most likely to keep your state secure and stable.
So why? What's the reasoning here? Well, it comes down to his pretty bleak view of human nature. He basically says that people are selfish, ungrateful, and unreliable. Love is great, but it's held together by a sense of obligation, which people will happily break whenever it benefits them. But fear of punishment, that, he argues, is a constant. It's always there. It's just a much more reliable tool for keeping people in line. Okay, so after all this talk about being a fox and a lion, about choosing fear over love, you have to wonder, why on earth are we still talking about this guy 500 years later? What is his actual legacy? Look, for centuries, the case against him has been pretty straightforward. People have called this a literal handbook for tyrants, a manual that justifies cruelty, deceit, basically any terrible thing a ruler wants to do. And to be fair, you can see why. You read some passages and they are genuinely shocking.
But more recently, a different interpretation has started to take hold. Many scholars today would say that he wasn't immoral, meaning against morality. He was a realist.
And this, right here, is the key to his legacy. Think about the philosophers who came before him. They were always writing about ideal republics, about how politics should be in a perfect world. Machiavelli did the exact opposite. He looked at the world around him in all its brutal, messy reality and just described how it actually worked. He was the first to really separate politics from traditional morality, and that's why many call him the father of modern political science.
All right, but what about that famous line, "The end justifies the means"? Well, here's a fun fact. He never actually wrote those exact words. It's a summary, not a direct quote. But does it capture his big idea? Yeah, pretty much. His point was that for a ruler, the ultimate judgment comes from the result. If your actions, even the harsh ones, lead to a stable and secure state for your people, then they were justified.
So, when you boil it all down, the timeless message of the prince might just be this: you can't lead effectively by pretending the world is something it's not. To be a good leader, you have to understand people as they are, not as you wish they would be.
And that really leaves us with a huge question, one that's just as relevant now as it was 500 years ago. In the world of modern politics, business, even our own lives, where do we draw the line between being a smart realist and just being plain ruthless? It's a tough question, and it's one Machiavelli's work forces us all to think about.